Okay. I think we're ready. All right, great. So we're here at 7. Hopefully Sheena's on her way. Otherwise, we'll do roll call.
Okay. Chin, Hagan,
Here.
Murphy,
Here.
Moss, Wilson.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody, and welcome. So the first thing is oral communications, and we have one guest to communicate. Excellent. And we have David Carnahan from the City of Palo Alto.
Thank you, Chair Hagan, Commissioners. David Carnahan from the City Clerk's Office, here to speak with you about a few great opportunities for community members to help give back to Palo Alto while also helping shape the future of Palo Alto and continue the greatness that is our community. We're currently recruiting for 2 positions on the Architectural Review Board, 4 positions on the Historic Resources Board, and 2 positions on the Planning and Transportation Commission. Each of these bodies is a fantastic way for people to get to know kind of how our government works and perhaps shape the future of land use to a certain degree in the future of the city. The application deadline is September 19th at 4:30 p.m. Applications are available on the City Clerk's webpage, cityofpaloalto.org/clerk. And then the 4 of you have homework. We're going to give you a flyer, and we ask you to reach out to at least 2 community members that you think would be a good fit for one of these bodies and would, hopefully also they'd get something out of serving. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. I'd also just like to introduce Nigel Jones, president of FOPAL, Friends of Palo Alto Library, and welcome him and thank him for all his work and the work that FOPAL does on support of our libraries. Okay, great. So any agenda changes or requests or deletions? Okay. So I think we're ready to go. So we might as well jump in. So we have the draft minutes, and we're going to approve those. Any comments or questions on the draft minutes? We have June 29th. I think didn't we have 2? April, but we don't need to approve April, I guess? Okay. So June 29th. Any comments or questions or changes? Do you have a motion to approve the draft minutes?
Can move to approve them.
Thanks, Brigham. Second?
I'll second.
Bob, thank you very much. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No abstentions. Okay, great. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the assignment of council buddies. So for our not as new but still fairly new members, we each year we go through the list of council members and we pick 1 or 2 council buddies. And then we make ourselves available to those council members if they ever have questions. We'd encourage you to introduce yourselves so that they know who they can contact. And then if there's any ever issues that come up that you think might concern council or them as individual members, we'd encourage you to reach out to make them aware. So that's the main role. So I don't know, do we have the list of the current members? So maybe we should review that first.
Sure. Currently, let's see, Tom Du Bois, Bob Moss, you're his buddy. Eric Filseth and Adrian Fine do not currently have buddies. Karen Holman, Sheena Chin is her buddy. Liz Niss, Doug, you are hers. Greg Scharf currently does not have an assigned buddy. Greg Tanaka, that's you, Doug. And Corey Wolbach is Sheena Chin. And Lydia, Bob, you were assigned to her, but as she is the liaison, you can have, you can keep up with her, but she does have, more, she gets more information, so.
Those 2 would be fine for me.
Adrian Fine?
No, I said those 2 would be.
Those 2 are fine,
Lydia
yeah.
and
Du Bois,
and
yeah.
Du Bois.
Great.
And I'm happy to switch since I've had Councilmember Nis and Councilmember Tanaka. I'd be happy to keep them as well if other folks, but I wanted to open that up in case anyone's interested. So I don't know if Brigham or Amy, you have a preference?
No strong preference. I'm happy to, if you want to switch, I'd be happy to take Councilmember Ness.
Okay, great. And Brigham, do you have any interest in?
Could you, Monique, could you please say again the ones that don't currently have a buddy?
Sure. And I will say that in previous years, the chair has often only had one person, just because the idea that you have more responsibilities as the chair. But currently, without an assignment, are council members Filseth, Fine, Scharf, or Mayor Scharf, and Tanaka. I mean, Doug's assigned to Tanaka, but you're willing to switch it up, so.
Brigham, you and I could take 2 each if.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'd be interested in maybe Fine and Scharf.
Okay,
And I'll take Phil Seth.
sure.
Does that work?
Yeah. And then we'll leave Sheena with her assignments. How about that?
Sure.
And then Hagan, you stay with Tanaka.
Okay, great.
Okay.
That works.
So
So
then
do you want to
we'll-
review it just real quick?
Sure. Councilmember Du Bois, assigned with Bob Moss. Eric Filseth with Amy Murphy.
Great.
Adrian Fine with Brigham Wilson. Karen Holman with Sheena Chin. Liz Nis with Amy Murphy. Greg Scharf with Brigham Wilson. Greg Tanaka with Doug Hagan. Corey Wolbach with Sheena Chin. And Bob Moss will remain assigned to Lydia. And then in January, we get to do this all over again because there will be a different mayor and we'll rotate or not. So that's entirely up to you all. Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, everyone. Wonderful. Okay, so then we're going to talk about, we discussed last time about the formation of the subcommittee for languages and our international collection. And Bob and I volunteered ourselves. And so we've got an update. So I'd be happy to
Why don't you go ahead?
just give you an introduction, and then Bob, maybe you want to fill in. So what we wanted to do tonight was give you an update and kind of let you know where we are. And the idea, really what we worked on was putting together a kind of a plan for what we want to accomplish and what we're trying to find out, versus, trying to immediately bring back bits of information. We try and figure out what we're comprehensively looking at. So we're looking for your feedback, others' feedback on where we should be focused. Bob and I spoke. We also spoke with Monique, and Monique has also offered to make Diane available to us to support the subcommittee. So I think we've got a great start. I know I've got some topics here, in terms of things we thought we'd investigate. Bob, do you want to fill in some other stuff?
One of the things that's a little interesting about Palo Alto, most people don't realize this, but there are literally dozens of languages spoken here. And as an example, when our granddaughter graduated from Jordan, gosh, this must have been at least 10 or 15 years ago, each of the graduates was asked to welcome everybody in their native language. And there were 26 different native languages that were spoken, and that wasn't all that were available. There were other languages that I knew the kids spoke them, but they were too shy to get up and say anything. So at one point, I don't know what the current number is, but several years ago they said there were 40 different languages spoken in Palo Alto. So there is no way we can keep that many number of different languages on the shelf. So we have to kind of concentrate on the ones that are the most populous, let's put it that way. And right now it's Russian, Chinese, and Spanish. And I kind of wonder why we aren't getting an awful lot of requests for things like Japanese, because there are a lot of Japanese here too. One of the questions that came up was, should we be asking people what language books would you like to see? Or should we just wait until they come to us and ask for them? And I don't think there's a simple answer to that. So there's advantages to doing it both ways. One of the problems of asking people is they're going to have a language that they speak primarily, which isn't the one we're going to be asking them in. So they may not recognize that there's an opportunity. I don't know how you get around that. So all I can say is that we do have a lot of books in different languages. We have a fairly large circulation in those 3 languages. And we may want to add 1 or 2 more languages in the future. Which ones and how many books is still up in the air. I'll let it go with that.
Okay, thanks, Bob. I think that's a great overview of the both the opportunity and some of the challenges and constraints, as we look at this topic. And I know Monique and her staff have thought a lot about it as well. So some of the other, kind of topics or ideas that we talked about gathering information on that might be useful to us as we think about the topic. One was to, as Bob pointed out, the multitude of languages, if there was some sort of demographic info for Palo Alto and surrounding communities that is representative of our users, so we get some sense of our environment and how we compare to that. I'm getting a phone call in the middle of this, sorry. And then we also were trying to figure out what the current supply is. So just a review of the current foreign language collection, both in terms of quality and age, and how that might compare to the English language collection, which we did get a report on previously. So we could hopefully, Diane would help us compare those two potentially. The other thought was to investigate circulation info on the current collection and to see where checkouts are, and then if there's any hotspots at particular branches by language. And then, in a further effort to kind of understand the demand or the latent demand was to explore if there's requests on hold for new materials for foreign languages as some indicator of what the demand might be or the current interests. Bob did mention, the potential survey, which we brainstormed about how to promote that and get it out if we were to do one, but there are some challenges to doing that. And then we also discussed with Monique about the possibility of comparing to neighboring libraries, or at least at the state level. And Monique did have some data that she sent, or some access to some information. It might not be exactly what we're looking for, but it might give us some indication. It might not be apples to apples, but that's something else that we might explore. So I guess at this point, I guess I'd stop to get your feedback, your thoughts, any other ideas, what else we should be thinking about as we work with Diane to bring back a report to the committee. And then maybe after we think about that, the other kind of question is what are we trying to accomplish, or what are the strategies, and whether it's adding to the collection that we have now, adding new languages, refreshing the collection so it's more up to date. How do we prioritize certain languages? Is there an opportunity to have certain languages at certain libraries? And then how do we leverage potentially online resources as well? Although I'm really pleased to see the press release. Hopefully everybody got a chance to read that, and the timing on that was phenomenal. So that's exactly, I think, the kind of thing that which is great to support this effort. So, okay, so that's really where we are. So I think, Bob, unless you have any other comments, we can open it up to some feedback and thoughts.
Well, I have one other comment, and that is, if you're going to have another language, let's say a fourth language, that we're going to try to stock on the shelves, what kind of books do you have? Do you have mysteries? Do you have fiction? Do you have children's books? What kind of books in Italian, for example, would be really, really desired? I don't know how you figured it out either. So one of the problems with expanding to another language is how do you do it? And how do you get the word out to the people that speak that language that these books are there? And, oh, would you like children's books, or would you like books that tell you how to do your lawn? I don't know. It's a real conundrum.
You had mentioned looking at demographic information for current users, and I was wondering, based off the presentation at our last meeting with Analytics on Demand, where we can get information about non-users as well, maybe just comparing that in terms of the languages spoken.
Yeah, it seemed like you thought through a lot of the resources that would be really helpful. I think there is this challenge of, if you can focus on maybe physical books for these large spoken groups, but when you get maybe farther down the tail where you have a handful of households, I wonder if that's where leveraging digital resources, just so that you're able to allow the flexibility for like the different books you mentioned, whether it's children's or adults or all those different things, while not having to like stock those books, because the demand would be a lot lower than for English books.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks very much. Monique, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, or you want to talk a little bit about the information you thought we might have access to as far as comparative statistics.
Well, I think the comparative statistics can be helpful. You do have that stuff online, but every community is a little different. The language group or the new non-English population may be different. The fact that we have as many Russian speakers as we do in Palo Alto is a surprise to a lot of people. We have a large collection of videos in Farsi, for example, because it's a very popular item, but it's, again, not a language that many people typically hear when they're, in the community. So we'll be happy to make available to you the resources that we use and the information that we get, particularly from the school district, in terms of what languages are spoken in the home. We don't exist in a vacuum. We share our information with everyone else. But I think that this will be a good opportunity for you all to create a piece of information that will be helpful to others in the community, and as far as the digital resources, well, as far as all the resources, I think the thing we have to keep in mind is that just because you think, oh yeah, there would be mysteries in Italian, they're not readily available perhaps to libraries. They may be published in Italy, but they're not going to be available in the US. And there are limits to which languages are widely distributed for purchase, or in formats that will last in many countries, particularly in Asian countries. They're very disposable. They'll fall apart easily, so you'll circulate it once or twice, and then it'll be something that's unusable. So over the years, different vendors have come and gone from the Bay Area. We often buy directly from, we go to the places to buy books in Japanese and in Chinese and, different languages. So, and we've sent Diane to book fairs, to a book fair that happens periodically in Taipei, Taiwan. We also are part of a consortial group that will purchase in Guadalajara at a book fair there. So those are often really good ways of getting materials. But you'll be able to report on all of this and show this. I think one of the great things is that we will look at a way to highlight this on the city's open data site where a lot of our circulation information and collection information is available. So it will help us too.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for your thoughts and participation. So I think the next steps for us are Bob and I will circle back and work with Monique and Diane, and then hopefully bring something back. We'll see it on an agenda in the near future. Okay, great. And in the meantime, if you have any other thoughts or questions, feel free to email us. Okay, our next topic is a discussion, and Bob's going to tell us about the ALA conference.
Well, first, it was very well attended. And one of the problems I had with it was that there were, during all the sessions, there were at least 2 and sometimes 3 papers I'd like to listen to simultaneously. And so I had to pick one, or that one, or this one. It was kind of frustrating at times. But just a couple of general comments. There were several speakers who mentioned that they had been converting their libraries to the same sort of facilities that we did years ago when the new Mitchell Park Library was built, where they're putting in meeting rooms, conference rooms, areas where the people can get together and talk or have events. A fair number of them have outdoor areas where children in particular can get outside and do things. They've expanded significantly from just being a media storage area. And we did that when we moved into Mitchell Park. We put in these meeting rooms, and we have the same thing at Rinconada. We expanded that as much as we could. And the idea was that libraries are community facilities where people gather together for a number of different purposes, not just to take out literature or to sit and read, but also to interact with each other and with groups. And I was seeing that in a lot of libraries all over the country. Most of the librarians who were there, of course, were from the Midwest, from Illinois and Indiana and Missouri, Minnesota, Wisconsin, states that are near Chicago. But there were a few people from much farther away, and their comments were similar, that their libraries were operating more as community facilities and meeting areas and let's say, community spaces. And I think we were kind of ahead of the curve in Palo Alto because when we designed the new libraries, we intentionally did it that way so we'd have places where people could get together and congregate and interact, not just go in and take out a book and leave or sit there and read. So that was one of the things that came across. Now I want to very briefly give you a little bit of an idea of some of the papers talks I listened to. How one of them was called graphic memoirs, how nonfiction graphic novels bring life to work, real lives to live. And that was very interesting because they talked about how they were looking at literature that was based on actual events and then was spread out from the event to expand what could be happening in the future. And I thought it was very well done. I thought it was very interesting. Paper was given, whoops. No, it doesn't give the name of the person. I didn't write it down. Sorry, I missed that one. Anyway, I thought it was interesting that they talked about how literature and library events can be used to look at what's been happening and expand it into the future and make it let's say, consistent with what was happening, what might happen. Another talk I went to was coding, where students in particular want to come in and learn how to do computer coding and how the libraries could operate as, let's call them event centers, where they can have coding sessions, where they can have people come in and teach the kids how to code and evaluate what's being done. I thought it was very interesting that they're looking at things like that in the library. They're talking about internet access and computer use. Another one, oh, it was kind of interesting. One of the ones that I tried to get into was about the problem you have with too many people using the facility. And the meeting room was jammed. I couldn't even get in. People were really interested in that topic. One of the other ones I went to was about a new frontier, aging, how libraries and librarians can utilize the aging population, bring them into the community, bring them into the libraries, and use their knowledge and experience to improve what the libraries do and to make the library events and programs interesting to people outside of just this little narrow group. I thought it was very interesting that they were able to utilize that. One of the other interesting comments I thought was kind of nice, the open library, how that you get an open library and how to make it successful and how people get to use the library facilities. You know, not just the library, but the internet access and everything else that goes with being in a facility. And there were a lot of librarians who were talking about how they were trying to do that. And one of the ones that struck me was this fellow from a small library in Illinois, and they had made all of these expansions. They put in meeting rooms, they had more activity programs, they were looking out to teens and children, and they did a terrible job apparently of getting the word out because they didn't see any reaction to their notifications. This is available now, come on in and use it. And so they said if you're going to do these things, you have to be very aware of what works in informing the community that you're doing this and it's available, and get people to actually use it. He didn't have an answer on how to do it. He just said, well, this is what we did and it didn't work. But I think that's important that when we do things in the library, we automatically assume everybody's going to be aware of what's going on in Palo Alto because everybody in Palo Alto knows everything about everything. But that's not necessarily true. And there's so much happening there, so many competition for people's attention, that if we do something, we have some kind of a program in the library, we have to be very aware of how we can most effectively inform the community and get them to participate. And if we're asking people, what do you want? Again, we have to be very proactive in figuring out how we can get the questions out, how we can get people to respond, and how we can get the broadest range of responders, if you will. It's not always easy. So anyway, that was the main talks I went to and the comments that people had. Do you have any questions? Okay. I thought it was a very useful event, and so I say it was very well attended. It was busy, busy, busy.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
In the first weekend of November coming up, the California Library Association will be having its annual conference. So if you are interested in attending that, it is in Riverside this year. So it's actually a location I think they have not been to, but it is possible for you to attend that. They will also have, I think the state library is funding recording about 20 of the more than 100 programs. So there will be some virtual possibilities to view programs of interest. And I believe that those are going to be selected by the greater library audience in California. So hopefully it'll be the top 20 things where you might not have been able to get into the room anyway. So just wanted to mention that's coming up in November. So if you're
the
interested.
registration for that, or when does the period end for that? to register?
It never ends. I mean, you can walk up and register, but
Okay.
the prices change the closer you get to it. So I think there's an early bird ending September 1st, and then there's probably another period. But feel free to get in touch with us or go online to the California Library Association website.
Thank you. Do we know when the next ALA is or where it is? Do we have any idea when next year's is?
Yes, the annual, yeah, they're scheduled well through like 2020 something. So next year's will be at the end of June in New Orleans, and the registration will start for that probably in early September or October. So we'll
Okay.
send out the notice when we get that.
Great. And then just a question for you, Monique. Do you know the PLA is the Public Library Association versus the ALA? Like, how do they fit together? Are those conferences different?
They are different. So the American Library Association is the umbrella organization, and it's made up of divisions based on either types of library or type of work. So there's a division for service to children, for school librarians, for leadership, and there's also Public Library Association and the Association for College and Research Libraries, so the academic libraries. Those are the two larger ones. So PLA will have a conference next March in Philadelphia, so that actually will be before the annual conference. The nice thing about going to PLA is that every program relates to public libraries, whereas at an ALA, you're going to have programs that relate to academic libraries, cataloging in academic libraries, international librarianship, just a broader range of programs. So thank you for reminding me of that. We'll send links to, even though I'm president-elect, I obviously not doing my job. So we'll send links to that as well to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Monique. And thanks, Bob. Thanks for attending and representing us and bringing us back that info. Okay, great. So now we're moving on to Monique's report.
Yes, yay. So I did want to mention on the top, it hadn't happened yet when I wrote my report, but this past Monday, we had a solar eclipse viewing party at the Mitchell Park Library, and we had about 700 people who came there. And we had written a grant. I had seen a notification early on, and I forwarded to Jenny Jordan and said, hey, here's a grant to get 1,000 glasses. We should do that. And I wasn't thinking we would do a big party, but one of our librarians, Maggie Lai, had been hoping to go to Oregon, and I think she either might not have enough vacation or, well, maybe the hotels were all booked, but because she's a brand new librarian, man, she did a fantastic job. So we had an event the night before, or the Sunday before, where you could build a viewer. We handed out 700 glasses a couple of weeks before, and literally every third phone call was about whether or not we still had glasses. So the staff asked if they could change the outgoing phone message to say, no, we don't have glasses anymore, but we have instructions on how to build a viewer. And so we hoarded about 300 glasses. So on the morning of the event, people were standing in line at 8 in the morning waiting to get glasses. And so we watched the live NASA feed. We had it set up in the courtyard at Mitchell Park. We had snacks, we had the live NASA feed, we had our robot, our Now robot out, and the VR station to keep people busy. We had crafts for kids. We were all like just praying that the fog would, go away in time. And so we had a great time, and it was a really nice community event. People were sharing glasses because it wasn't over so fast. You could talk to each other. People hung out for a couple of hours and had a really great time, and used a colander. We had little 3D printed viewer things, and so yeah, that was really a nice event. I think you'll see some more photographs, and if you go to all of our Facebook feeds and Instagram and things like that, you'll see photos from that day. So I wanted to mention that did happen this week, so we had a great time. I did include information about virtual visits as well as the actual instructions from the State Library data collection when that comes out and is sent, so you can see how it's open to interpretation in many ways, and in some ways not, and sometimes the instructions are clear and sometimes they're not. So I don't know if anyone had any specific questions going back to that, but you can see how they define the circulation of electronic materials as well as retrieval of electronic information, two different things. And I don't know if you had any questions or follow-ups about that specifically.
I had a question about the circulation and attendance figures, which I noticed have been dropping slightly, not by a lot, but they're down some. And I wonder, is that, let's say, common among libraries in general, or is it just something we're seeing?
You must be looking at the monthly reports, is that correct? Let me get to... circulation going down is common all over the country, so that's not as big a problem. I think that, for example, if you're looking in July, the visitor count did go down from 2016, but it's still higher than 2015 for July itself. So I think overall we're not necessarily concerned. We still, depending on the library, we still see a steady pace. And we'd have to go back to 2016 to see if there was something in particular that drove that additional circulation, or if it just was that. But overall, circulation trends are down 3 to 7% around the country.
Is there, Monique, since it's a countrywide trend, is it just people reading less everywhere, or is there some sort of national?
On the contrary, I think people are reading more everywhere. I don't know that they're getting their items by checking them out from the library, so that may be. But I would say that people are probably still reading far more than people would have predicted when ebooks came out, but that's also limited. So, we're all trying to figure it out. I think Bob's point was a good one, that we have a lot of things competing for our attention. So,
while we're on briefly on these reports,
sure.
The data may exist, and it's just not shown here, but would it be possible, in addition to getting the raw numbers, to maybe see some of these data points graphically, so that we can sort of see?
We do that quarterly,
or
every half year. We don't do it every month.
Perfect, okay.
And actually, this report, the format will be changing. We had a graphic design intern this year, or this summer. Intern. And so her name is Doris, and she's fabulous. And she has reorganized a number of things including the monthly report. So in October, you'll see that. But I will, I'll check and see if there's an easier way to do it. But normally we do it.
Quarterly is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Great. So in terms of the rest of my report, we did reduce the checkout limit for Hoopla based on just budgetary limitations. We've heard from, I've heard personally from one person who was not happy with that and who said that in Los Angeles, they get to have way more items than we do, and certainly we can do as well as LA Public or LA County Library. So I said, okay, I'm sorry that was your experience. This is what we can do for now. But we are adding Canopy, which will be also five loans per person per month. And again, it's a different streaming service, less straight entertainment, a greater number of things that could be used in the classroom. The thing with Canopy, they have 30,000 items. They add about 500 items per month. And they have the great courses. They have the full Criterion collection. They have PBS. And all of their items come with public performance rights, not only for the library, but also the borrower. So if a teacher wants to use it in a class, they don't have to worry about copyright limitations. If, you and your club of whatever you do wanted to watch something, you could do that without worry. So that's a really nice benefit. And the cost is comparable to other systems, and we've switched things around to be able to add this to the collection. Probably the biggest news, besides changing the lending period starting October 1st, we're going back to 3 weeks, is that we will have a speaking event on Tuesday, October 10th. It will be in the auditorium at the Art Center because every community room in the libraries are in use. And which I think will be a great room. The auditorium was where we had the temporary main library for a short time while we were under construction, and it does have a nice stage, so it'll lend itself to a speaking engagement. We're going to have Miguel Figueroa from the American Library Association Center for the Future of Libraries, and Dan Russell, who's a research scientist at Google. Each will do a short presentation, and then they'll be in a Q&A format with Gennady Shire from the Palo Alto Weekly. So it'll be an interesting discussion about where libraries are going. And I think for Palo Alto, it'll be hopefully a reaffirmation that we did the right thing by updating these buildings and with the experimentation that goes on nowadays in our libraries with the robots and with lending Chromebooks and doing things now that we think of as second nature, but which are still pretty innovative around the country. So we look forward to that, and we hope that you all will be able to be there. Any questions about that? I think that was all that I especially wanted to highlight. We will be sending out a letter to all of the library patrons, letting them know of the different changes that have gone on and are coming up, as well as announcing the speaking program. So I hope that the community, if there's anyone listening, will be there on October 10th. And we'll do our usual press information. Then finally, you had an a memo from Gayatri updating you on what has been going on with the volunteer program, as well as her plans for the coming time period. And she'll come and do an in-person update so that you can ask any questions later, but if you have questions now about what was included, I'll be happy to answer them. Anything, if I know.
I'm just curious, do you get many people contacting librarians and saying, we would like to have such and such an item, we can't find it on the shelf, we couldn't find where it was, so can you get this for us? Does that come up very often? I wouldn't think so, but I'm just kind of curious.
It does come up. We have several different ways of addressing that. So because we're part of Link Plus, we have access to, close to 9 million different titles in academic and public libraries in California and Nevada. So that is our primary source for getting something. If it's on the shelf somewhere else, my experience is I've had it within 2 days. So it's never a really long period. So that's one option. The other option is if it's something that we think other people will like, we'll go ahead and purchase it. There is a request to purchase items. There's a way to request that through our website. There's a form that people can fill out. So that gets directly emailed to the acquisitions librarian, and then he purchases the item and gets in touch with the requester to find out if they want it on hold. Sometimes people just want to tell us about a book. Sometimes they're a local author, sometimes they're a regional author, and they just email us to tell us about, I have a new book out, I'd like you to buy it. In that case, something like that is handled the same way any other book would be selected following the collection development policy. But we do receive requests. We receive probably several a week, and for the most part, we are happy to satisfy that either through Link Plus or just direct purchase, and we'll make sure that it's there.
It's kind of interesting because one of the comments my wife has made occasionally is that there'll be an author that she likes that has put out a series of books, 5 or 6 books in the series, and the Palo Alto Library will have the 2nd and the 8th, and nothing in between.
Right, and so in those cases, often it may not have been clear that it was part of a series when the information came out in terms of how to purchase. We may not purchase everything that a particular author publishes. And by the time, with some of those series, by the time we go back to make the purchase, that item is no longer in print or something like that. So for us, the best way is to go to Link Plus, see who has the title available, and request it for the customer. Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Monique. So I think we're also going to cover the volunteer report. I wasn't sure if you're going to introduce.
I did that?
Oh, that was in there.
Yeah, the volunteer report was the memo that was attached from Guy 3. It outlined what activities have gone on up to date.
So I wasn't sure if you want to speak to that a little more, or, okay.
And then outlined what her activities were going to be coming up.
Okay.
And that she would be happy to come back. We are hiring a new librarian who will be, part of the responsibilities will be related to volunteers. And we reassigned a librarian who's working with the volunteer program, the Anna Elisa. But I mentioned, so if any of that, if you have any questions or comments, we just felt like a written update would be helpful now, not a full presentation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I had a question about the volunteer thing. I was just curious, what would you say is their biggest impact, or where they're making their biggest impact, the biggest value add in terms of the their hours, or
So that's a really good question. I would say that there's a couple of places. One is any kind of technology coach or technology help. We have teen volunteers. I mean, this began actually as a grant program with Jessica when she was part of the Eureka program, which was a leadership development program for library staff, which no longer exists. But her grant, her $5,000 grant, was to have teens trained to work with the seniors at Avenidas and another location, maybe Channing House. And the teens would go and work one-on-one and in small groups with seniors who had, their kids had given them a tablet, and they didn't know what to do. So they coached them on how to set up a Twitter account, how to do FaceTime, how to do different things like that. And that grew into an in the library tutoring program. So we also have virtual reality coaches now, because we do have the virtual reality station, which people use primarily just to explore it, but also to do the 3D printing and to get a 3D image of what it is you want to print before you print it on the 3D printer. So those are our big areas. And the other one is the English as a second language conversation groups. We have retired adult school volunteers or retired adult school ESL teachers who are our volunteers. And we have beginning conversation groups and advanced conversation groups. We have people who come from Sunnyvale and Redwood City and things like that to participate in the advanced groups, because many libraries don't have the trained volunteers. So that's a very popular program, and those are the two that stick out. We also have, which many people don't realize, we have a homebound program. So we have volunteers who take materials to people who cannot leave their home for one reason or another. And I know that that's an area that Guthrie really wants to build up and recruit more participants for that. That can be a very rewarding program, not only for the person at home, but the volunteer who's delivering to those people. So those are the three right now. But certainly we use volunteers in a broad number of ways. There were people at the solar eclipse party who were volunteers, who were just helping to move people around and help them make a viewer, things like that. So.
Are we looking for more volunteers, or are we fully staffed? Always?
No,
okay.
We're always looking for more, yeah.
And then just real quick, I'm not super familiar because my kids aren't old enough yet, but there are volunteer hours in high school, right? That there is kind of a credit program for? I wasn't sure if you could speak to that and how that fits with our program.
Well, the schools do have a public service requirement for high school students that they have to accomplish. We do have a lot of the tech volunteers and the T-Lab volunteers, they are teens who, a lot of times teens will start with us in order to do their credit, and then after being here for a while, they realize, oh, I really like this, and they stay on. But they do a lot of helping prepare for craft programs with story times or other kids programming. They are attendants and assistants at those kinds of events. That we have, sometimes we have large parties that consume all of children's, for example. We've in the past had like a Harry Potter party where basically children's became Hogwarts. And so there were 1,200, 1,400 people who circulated through that night. But, you know, we rely a lot on volunteer help on things like those events. So, so there you can, if you're a teen and you're in high school and you need to get the credits done, you can give us a call, go to the library's volunteer webpage, and we can certainly help with that. And there are volunteer opportunities with the Friends of the Library as well. I don't know if you guys participate in the school program. You do.
Yes, we do. Many different times.
So there are opportunities there as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Monique. And thanks to all our volunteers as well. So we have next on the list here, Council Liaisons Report, but I know Councilmember Kuo sent her regrets for this meeting, so we'll wait for that for next month, or next meeting, which I think is in 2 months. Okay, do we have any commissioner reports or questions? Anything anyone wants to share? Library related.
I have I guess I call it a kind of generic question, and that is, how are we going to establish what programs, what activities, what things we should be providing in the next few years? Obviously, if there's an event or a type of class that has a lot of attendees, that's something you want to keep on doing. But something might come up that we never thought of that would turn out to be very popular. How do we recognize that there are opportunities, let's call it an opportunity, and institute them? What system, if any, do we have? Do we ask people, what would you like to have happen at the library? Or do you just look at what's happening in other libraries around the country, around the area? Or do you wait until a lot of people come knocking on your door and say, I want to have this event at the library? And how do we handle it? I'm just kind of curious.
That's a great question, Bob. So the short answer is that we actually plan our programs about a year in advance. We have a process. We have forms for the staff to fill out if they have a passion project that they would like to do. We've had numerous programs of all varieties, and we get them by looking at other libraries. We are actually pretty innovative, and other libraries copy us. But we look at what's going on in popular culture, in school, in publishing for ideas. We look at television. We have family night programs. We have all different kinds. So on any given day, there's often at least one kind of programming event going on, which you can see on the Events calendar online. We do get suggestions from customers, and we get approached by many different people who say, oh, I have this program I would like to present. For example, we will be having a Diwali program coming up at the end of October. And as luck would have it, I had a local author who had just written me, and she has published children's books on Diwali and other festivals like that. So they'll be making use of her volunteering for the event. But we do have an overall calendar and guide. There's usually a theme of some sort, or we're tying into what the city council is looking at in terms of their, usually it's related to health and well-being as one of their overarching things, but sometimes it has to do with youth. And then the final thing that we do is there's a group of children's librarians who each year they have a day where they have different storytellers, magicians, performers, science instructors who can come, and for 15 minutes in front of a group of librarians, they do their shtick. And so you get a sample of what this person might do if you hire them to come to your library. there's often many more people who want to perform, but this is it's a great opportunity for us to see outside talent without having to hire the really bad magician or the sad clown. So it's any number of different ways. It's a part of a librarian's regular duties are of a public services librarian and even the tech librarians to find people or to help coordinate a program every now and again. And I think we'll be putting together a more formal written policy as part of some upcoming work, so we'll do a longer report at that time. But, it really, again, short answer is all of those things you mentioned and then some. And it's really one of the staff-driven interests. So we had one staff member who's a library specialist, but he has a master's in history, and he did 2 speaking events about World War I history, and they were packed, and he spoke for over an hour each time. But there's such, again, it's something that we don't normally present. We're not going to do it multiple times a year because it wouldn't have the same draw, but it was of interest, and it was timely given the different anniversaries that come up.
One of the things that comes to mind is we have this small university near town that has a lot of very talented people there. And I wonder, have you ever considered going over to Stanford and saying, gee, do you have somebody who could talk to us about such and such? Or do you ask, is there anybody at Stanford who would like to come into Palo Alto Libraries and make a presentation about their interests and specialties? I'm just kind of curious, are we getting any back and forth with Stanford? Is it worthwhile?
We have had one of the most popular programs that happened the first summer I was here is that we had an associate professor from Stanford who came and talked about black holes in space. It was aimed at teenagers. The room was packed. The kids loved it. He was this young, exciting. He made science really, fun, and they would not let him leave the room. So yes, we do reach out. Generally, we have the person or the idea in place. We've had a few people volunteer their time. For example, Dan Russell, who will be speaking on October 10th. He works for Google. He is a Google research scientist. He'll be on the panel coming to speak about the future of libraries, but he also does programs for us on how to search Google, and a beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And those are continually packed. There's a waiting list, and it's a very popular program that we repeat periodically. That is somebody who lives in Palo Alto, volunteers his time, loves libraries, wants to do that. So we do have people approach us, and as we can fit them into the overall plan, we do so. So we have, just like everything else, we've reached out to Stanford at different times, and they go in and out of interest. So it just depends on the person that you're trying to talk with.
Okay, great. Thank you. So if there aren't any other questions or comments or announcements, we can talk about the next meeting agenda. And there's some topics here, and maybe there's others for the next meeting or future meetings. But what we're looking at for October is a presentation on the Pacific Library Partnership Technology and Innovation Grant. It sounds like the robots are coming.
They are, and yes, we want to do a follow-up. We're at the end of that grant, and we thought you'd be interested in the what we were able to accomplish.
Okay, great. And the other was library digital resources. So,
This was something you had, the LAC had asked about. Yeah, so it's just about everything that we have online, updating you on the different items, as well as will be in the other room. So maybe demoing a couple of items. But your homework will be to take a look at those pages between now and October.
okay, great. And then the third thing was the report on the use of social media marketing and BiblioCommons.
And BiblioCommons. So BiblioCommons will be going live about January-ish, and we will, social media, we have BiblioCommons up and running, which will replace Encore eventually as the search layer from the catalog. There will be a greater functionality and interactivity with different social media. So we wanted to just give you a brief introduction to that and show you how it works and perhaps get some feedback on issues related to privacy and other topics. So we'll have a presentation about that.
Okay, great. Any other items for agendas? Bob?
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about, and I don't know if we want to, how much we want to pursue it, but we have a lot of very capable, famous people in Palo Alto. And would it be worth looking into trying to contact some of them and ask them if they'd like to make a presentation about the future or what they're doing? Have Zuckerberg come and talk about how he built his company. If he was still alive, it'd be wonderful to have Steve Jobs come and talk about what the future is going to be like. And, well, since the late 40s, Palo Alto has had anywhere from 5 to 8 Nobel laureates in town. There are 2 of them live within half a mile of me. So do we want to contact some of those people and ask them if they would like to make a presentation on whatever it was they were interested in? Is this something the library should be doing and looking at? I don't know, I'm just throwing it out.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, did you have a comment?
I had a question actually about if we're going to be talking about social media marketing, will that information start to be filled in on here and will include Instagram as well?
It should, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll include all of our reach. We used to have a page that was produced and for some reason it wasn't getting included, but it will be, yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for noticing.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts or questions or comments? Okay.
Do
Monique?
you believe you'll be ready for
Oh, here's Sheena.
Sheena made it.
Now we can finally start. We've been waiting. No.
Do you think you'll have a report on your subcommittee,
I think
or
we'll
maybe
have to
the
see how
next
it
one?
goes. When's the next meeting after that? Because December.
December.
It is in December.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see how it goes. We can always, when would we need to add it by? A
When
week, 2 weeks before?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
So
so
we're
let's see when Bob and I can get with Diane and follow up with you and then see how it's going.
Okay, great.
So I'd say it's either October or December. Okay? Sheena, now's your chance.
Sorry. I came from other meeting and I thought I can make it. I'm sorry.
I know parking can be really tough down there, but... Okay, well, this is your chance to either make a comment, an announcement, ask a question, or move to adjourn the meeting.
I have the honor to have the motion to adjourn the meeting. Okay.
Okay, well, unless anyone seconds it, we're stuck.
Anyone second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Brigham.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
No.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I'm glad.